How do you define digital media?
Digital media, when we started covering the space about 10 years ago, and from the outset, what we've really been concerned with is how digital distribution has been impacting content industries, whether we're talking about the traditional newspaper publisher, the television broadcaster, or the radio broadcaster. And as you know, the effects have not always been welcomed by these industries, and in a lot of ways, digital media has been perceived as a disruptive technology, and the impact of that on the content industries.
Where do you see that going in the next 5 years?
Well, just like C-SPAN, I would say in kind of the early 90s, that empowered a distributed group of activists around the country that were interested in politics but not necessarily here in the Beltway. BitTorrent connects affinity groups no matter where they are in the world. So as they're consuming something that they care about, they can be sharing it with others that care about the same thing. The benefit to a website that uses BitTorrent is that those users facilitate and help get the message out, get the content out, so the cost of making the message available is actually significantly lower.
For no one who wants to communicate is going to be able to ignore the extraordinary reach and accessibility of the new media, of which YouTube is a shining example of innovation. So it's up to us as politicians to use all these new channels to communicate, to engage, and of course to consult with the public. The prize, if we get it right, is not just better decisions by government, but also stronger and healthier and more profound democracies.
In the digital world, everybody has different powers and abilities, and that's one of the great things about digital media.
There's the question of whether, you could conceive of public education as a broader agenda that is not just classroom learning.
What we see is people learning what they need. So it's very much on-demand learning. They say, aha, I'm trying to solve a particular problem, so I'm going to go learn it. And then they look up and they say, hey, does anybody nearby know how to help me with this? And the odds are pretty high that somebody can. We see that kind of learning all the time.
It's like bringing a flashlight into a cave, right? We're suddenly will be able to see the contours of a new landscape that right now we only grope around. And I think that's the crucial thing. We're afraid of the dark. But if we bring light to the subject, I think we will be able to understand what's going on and make rational decisions about it.
Case, and it starts from a Facebook group. They asked all the Colombians and people of other cities to go to the streets and ask the guerrilla, Las FARC, to stop kidnapping people, because we have this big issue in our country. It's like a political issue, and it has a very great impact. If you're going to use Facebook for that, it's a good idea. Why not?
In my personal life, digital media are very useful because they help me in many ways during my studies, or to communicate with my friends abroad, or like to get information about some social events, such as today there is a dancing theater in Malmo, so I wouldn't know if I wouldn't read it on the Facebook. And I can participate this way in some things which I think are interesting.
It's limited.
Because it's more about sharing like a social life with someone.
Yeah, it's more like getting in touch with someone and meeting friends, and
like very superficial.
Yeah, you only say you want to be a nice person. You don't show everything of your life, only the good things.
Yeah.
So it's really superficial.
It's always like somebody manipulates the information. The big media groups manipulates the information, and if you want to comment or to say something about it, they also like can erase the comments or something. So a good alternative would be the blogs that are more like for alternative journalists, or you can put or write the real thing that you think